we'll be at the pub and he'll just whack me. Maybe I do have something that makes me a little bit different to everyone else, even if it is overdiagnosed.
People are depressed because they have ADHD.
One of my very close friends has 100% ADHD, but very differently to me. His is a physical representation of movement and fidgeting and like very obnoxious like noises and sounds, and we'll be at the pub and he'll just whack me. And I'm like, what's that? And like, he's just done this the whole time I've known him. So although me and him are very different, I would say mine is very much an internal struggle. It's much more a mental struggle, whereas I see other people that maybe have more of a physical struggle. I do struggle to sit still. I'm always sitting on my leg. I'm always jigging my foot. But yeah, it's all a very unique thing. And I think to answer your question is, when there was general more content and when the algorithm shifted more towards For You page or the TikTokification of all social media, a lot of us got fed content that spoke to us on a deep, meaningful level. And there are some ones that like 7 signs your partner's got ADHD, and my missus would send it to me.
Yeah.
And I would resonate with 5 or 6 of them. And then as you engage with that, you just get more and more content, you get more and more seen, and you start thinking, oh, maybe I do have something that makes me a little bit different to everyone else. But I hate the fact that like, for some reason, even if it is overdiagnosed by a lot of people, or even if it is, you know, it's used in Gen Pop now.
I do think that that's something that like neurodivergence in general is not even really understood fully yet. And I think we're just getting to the grasp of like how that can actually be diagnosed. And so many people are getting misdiagnosed. And I think a lot of people are probably getting misdiagnosed, even though it could be comorbidity. It could be the fact that people are depressed because they have ADHD, but they've been told they get depression, so prescribed antidepressants. But they're depressed because they feel out of sorts. They feel as if no one relates to them. They don't know why they're angry, etc. So like, I think a lot of this is like people are now feeling heard. Like they're actually, when they see these algorithms of things coming up, they're feeling heard. But for me, I felt like so validated. I got emotional, but then so invalidated because everyone was getting it. If that makes sense. I don't know if you felt the same.
Yeah, it's almost like people buying the stocks. Once you've discovered a new stock, it's really good, then everyone's buying it, and you're like, hold on, you're not the same as me. Like you're doing it because it's fun or whatever. I actually remember. So my diagnosis, it cost me like $3,000, and I had to go to a proper learning difficulty place in Wollongong. Like it wasn't like a call clinic. It wasn't like a doctor's. I was in there with people that their life was impacted negatively, and like, I'm there. I got my nice house, got my nice car. I'm like, what am I doing here? And then I was, I'm kind of here for answers. And actually, before seeking the ADHD assessment, I started therapy, and I hated it. Like, did not enjoy it. Did not like the awkward silences. Did not like these questions. Didn't like that if I maybe used the wrong word, it was extrapolated. And they were like, deep down, I'm like, oh, you know, maybe I used the wrong word. So when I went to do the test, got there, and the first assessment was 2 shapes on a screen, and I had to click a button. So I think it was like a small circle and a square, or a small circle with a bigger circle. And it would flash on screen, and when it flashes, I had to click. And if it was the wrong shape, I was not to click. And the woman said to me, she was like, oh, we're going to keep doing this until the test finishes. And I think the test was like 23 minutes. And I'm just sat there clicking and clicking. And at first I was super competitive. Then I was like, I'm going to top score this. Then I made my first mistake. And then after the first mistake, the rage came, and I'm sweating and the legs jigging. And I'm like, I can feel my heart rate and my blood pressure. And then I'm having this big internal conversation about, why are you so angry? It's just a game. Why are you so angry? It's just an assessment. Then I'm like, why have they made this test so long? This is fucking such a waste of time. I'm getting angry thinking about it now. Then at the end, the woman who did it, she wasn't like the clinical psychologist. She was like, oh, I don't think you have it because your score was so good. She's like, you went 17 minutes without making a mistake. And I was like, oh, okay. Went through to the next room, and it's where they put the nodes on my head. They got me to close my eyes, do mathematics and look at a painting. And then they had to go away and do the results of the test. And I went through and saw a psychologist. And she didn't have my results at this point, but she asked me a load of questions. And it was crazy. As we went through this list of questions that it was like 0 to 5, like 0, don't agree, 3, somewhat, kind of so, 5 strongly agree.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just being like 5, 5, 4, 5, 5, 5. And I was like, have they curated this list of questions for me?
Yeah.
And then when I could answer and I would explain to her like some of my idiosyncratic behaviors, that's when I was like, oh, this is what therapy must be like. Because I was like, yeah, I tend to do this. And she was like, okay. So I went away, came back. She had my results from the brain node. She's like, in the day one, they were like, okay, we think you have ADHD. It looks very likely. When she came back, she was like, we can't tell you for sure because, you know, we can't 100% like do a blood test to be like, you've 100% got it. But she was like, look at your brain scans here. She's like, your brain is most active with your eyes closed. And then your brain is secondly most active looking at a painting. And your brain was the calmest doing the mathematics. So when I closed my eyes, this is why. And then I said to her, I was like, it's weird, but even my missus does it now. I have to listen to a podcast when I go to bed. I can't sit there in silence.
I don't know what it's going to do for my brain long term, but
I have to. No, because it's like listening to a podcast is 3 out of 10 difficulty, but being left without anything to listen to is 10 out of 10 because then my brain wakes up. So like having validation for all of these behaviors that I had was so relaxing. But then I'll never forget when she said to me, she was like, you don't just have ADHD, you have anxiety. And I was like, oh, but that's not cool. I've always thought I'm quite a chilled person. And we got to the bottom of it. And I said it. She didn't tell me I said it. I was like, oh, I suppose I kind of catastrophized the outcome of everything I'm doing to be a worst case scenario so that I feel motivated to do it. Mm-hmm. And she just said to me, she goes, that's not a very healthy way to motivate yourself. And I was like, oh, no, it's not. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting. We get to the end, and when it got to the medication side of things, I was like, no, like I'm not here spending $3,000 so I can try some pills that are going to make me concentrate. I'm just here to understand better. I'm just here to come home and let my shoulders down. And the time with the psych actually allowed me to come home and speak to my missus, my partner, my business partners. I, up until 34 years old, hadn't realized the amount of not emotional baggage, but kind of like mental, cognitive baggage that I put on my business partners, where the messages I get before a phone call, we're on a call in 5 minutes. The constant reminding, you do know that you're on this podcast tomorrow. The constant, James, didn't you have a haircut today? Like, I didn't even realize how much, if not all of my success is propped up by the people around me, and that I'd shown them no gratitude for that. So I came home and I was like, I've never really said thanks before. I didn't realize that, you know, I'm literally propped up by the scaffolding of my network of people that understand where I'm good at things and where I'm bad. And without those, I'd probably be very scattered.
Yeah, I think that's because I was kind of getting like your diagnosis, or the reason for your diagnosis was so different. Mine was like, I was on a point where I was like, something has to change here. It was like almost like desperation. Like if I didn't get diagnosed, I don't know what I would have done. Like in terms, so it's so different that you were there for information. I was there for like, give me something to tell me like I'm not crazy, which is interesting. But I think you've probably hit the nail on the head with the fact at that point, I was like a one-man band. I'd hired people, it hadn't worked out and stuff, but I was like a one-man band. So I was trying to manage all this influx of messages and admin, and I created systems and stuff. It's really interesting that you've got people say, you've got this tomorrow and whatever. And I definitely think that that's probably why you're in that position. You know, when you used to be able to just sit on a bus and you wouldn't have a smartphone to distract yourself. So you got used, don't know if you ever heard urge surfing. So you get used to feeling an urge or a compulsion and just sitting with it, but you then don't have that, not able to like just chill. And now with smartphones and all that sort of stuff, people are just really struggling to be able to chill, even without ADHD. So then put someone with ADHD into that environment with a smartphone, then it's only going to exacerbate their symptoms. So then I think people are struggling more potentially.